you for joining us today in this our very first webinar of the year. My name is Cesar Costa from Uruit. I'll give you a brief introduction about our company, and then Leslie, our speaker today, will start with her presentation and talk about her experience. You can ask questions anytime during the presentation. Leslie will answer them in the last 10 minutes at the Q&A section. While she answers, we'll also start a brief poll for you to give us feedback about your webinar satisfaction. Some of you never have heard about Uruit, so that's okay. We are a software design and development studio that creates custom digital solutions for companies that want to challenge their industries and offer products that people appreciate and love. We serve clients, whether they need to launch a new product or modernize an existing app, from very early stages in the product strategy and design phases through development and growth and optimization. We partner with companies, large and small, for the last 13 years and help launch more than 150 apps across multiple industries in the United States. One of these companies is Forks Over Knives. This may ring a bell, as you're probably familiar with the organization or the popular documentary under the same name. In this case, in case you're not, I'll give you a little context. Forks Over Knives, the film was released in 2011, and it was a game changer in the industry. For many people, it offered a completely different point of view about nutrition, and for many, it was also an approach to what a plant-based diet meant. After this great success came a series of books and then a mobile app that offers resources and tools to make it really easy and enjoyable for people to maintain a healthy, plant-based lifestyle and get all the benefits of it. Today, we have Leslie Williams with us. She's Forks Over Knives Product Marketing Manager and at the nexus of product marketing and development for the Forks Meal Planner app. This is Forks Over Knives' keystone digital subscription product. We're here to learn from her experience, identifying and executing on the biggest opportunities to drive business impact and with a focus on user activation and retention. Thank you once again for accepting our invitation. So let's start. Leslie, over to you now.
Thanks so much, Cesar. As per usual, I was muted, the callback joke of the last year. So thanks everyone for being here and for joining us. If you're familiar with Forks Over Knives or not, don't worry. We'll give the full background and kind of get into things from the very beginning. So I'm Leslie. I'm the product marketing manager at Forks Meal Planner, which is under the umbrella of Forks Over Knives, the brand, which began as a documentary. So our founder was doing his own research to solve some of his own health problems and was shocked to discover that there's a super simple solution to the complex problem that is lifestyle disease. And so we call lifestyle disease that refers to diabetes, heart disease, obesity. And so he decided to make a film to get the word out about the value of a plant-based diet. And this is the early DVD cover. The film follows several individuals as they transition to the diet and kind of solve their health issues. So the diet is fundamentally a whole food plant-based diet, which means that we believe in eating whole grains, legumes, beans, vegetables, fruits, minimizing animal products and oils. And the film was a hit with millions of views. And the natural next step was to accompany it with a companion book, which you can see here, which was also a New York Times bestseller. So the film advocates for a plant-based diet. The philosophy is fairly basic. If you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, you can maintain a healthy weight and you can prevent or reverse diseases like diabetes and heart disease. And then, I'm so sorry. One moment. All right. I believe we're back. Sorry about that. So the Forks Over Knives diet was born out of the transformative belief that a whole food plant-based diet can improve your health and well-being. We don't count calories or macros. And basically, if you eat these high fiber, high water foods, you can, I am so sorry, we're having some technical issues, but I think they've been resolved. So you eat these foods that are high in fiber and water, which make you feel fuller longer. And then often that means that you can eat fewer calories and therefore lose weight and reverse disease if necessary. So people were pretty convinced by the film, and we had, some immediate adopters who wanted to transition fully to the diet and just were really gung-ho about getting started. So the diet works, and we know that, but then we're coming from a standard American diet where people, are eating fast food or just kind of have, their way of eating already set up. And at the time, this was 10 years ago or so, there were very few resources for plant-based recipes. So everybody eats, that's one of my favorite mantras, but not everybody eats like this. So the natural progression was from the film, the companion guide, which gave some more context to both the nutrition aspects and recipes, and then a website, a content-driven website with articles. So I went to the Wayback Machine to give you a glimpse of what our initial branding looked like and kind of the initial content offerings. So you can see here, it's a very vintage vibe. This is from 2012. And the primary offerings here were to host a screening. We wanted to get the word out. So it was just, how can we have one advocate, one enthusiast get the word out to more people? So you could sign up here to host a screening, and then some more value-driven content like recipes, some nutrition-based articles, and things like that. Once the film was out into the world and once the brand was established, we were able to kind of see that it's not actually the people with the diseases necessarily that are interested in this transition. So it's oftentimes their wives. So we did lean harder into branding that would appeal to women and also to a younger demographic. So this is our website, Glow Up. There's still a ton of content available for free on the website, from nutrition articles to recipes. And, we consider this one of our products as well, the website. It's free, available to everybody, and it gives us a platform to offer our products. So you can see here that there's a whole, tier of the website that's dedicated to just letting people know about our other offerings. So we will get into what those offerings are. So we identified 3 different groups of people. So after seeing the film, people are pretty convinced. We consider them plant curious. They know that eating vegetables is healthy and they want to do more of it, but they're not necessarily convinced that it can be a full lifestyle change for them. And then after the entry-level user, for followers who really kind of are convinced and really want to do it maybe 70+% of the time, we call them plant-minded. So they're eating plant-based, they're looking for ways to make it easier, more accessible. And so we have the books. Now we have 5 books. One's geared towards family, towards more global cuisine, and then also a basics book that's been out from the very beginning that is still a top seller. We added to that repertoire a magazine that has seasonal stuff and more trendy types of foods, and where we can kind of cue into people's thinking of the moment about recipes and deliver on those expectations. Ultimately, people want more recipes. You can never have too many recipes. So we also had the handheld version, the app, and the app has been the #1 paid food and drink app off and on for several years running. So it is a paid app, and it has some value adds like a dynamic shopping list, and also you can favorite things on there and kind of have, more of a saved kind of user experience and profile on the recipe app. But then even after we offer all this content, transitioning to a plant-based diet is hard. It's something, you eat 3 times a day hopefully at minimum. And, people know what to eat, but doing it in and out forever is a big undertaking. And we understand that it's a fundamental change to someone's lifestyle. So we wanted to make it easier by providing plant-based recipes with detailed preparation instructions, similar to, kind of a delivery experience where you don't have to do a ton of thinking or learning in order to follow this diet full time. So we also wanted to offer a more efficient cooking or prepping experience than just, coming home from the grocery store with groceries and just getting started. And then also community and support and resources throughout. so that people can stay motivated and supported as they go along. So that's where we come to our user who we identify as plant committed. This is somebody who is dedicated to doing this and probably needs to do it. They're driven by a health need. So those people are more invested. So they have, first of all, more resources or time or maybe money to put into it. And then also they are in a higher state of need. So we have a cooking course, which takes you from 0 to 1, from cleaning out your pantry and things like that. And the cooking course, knife skills, blanching versus boiling versus, every different thing. It takes you from learning how to dice an onion all the way through to learning how to make a plant-based butter out of cashews and onions. And then after the cooking course, so that's for people who really don't know what they're doing at all. Maybe we're on a fast food diet before. For people who have a basic understanding of cooking, we have the meal planner, which is really a one-stop solution for all things, plant-based. We tell you what to eat every day and how to prepare and shop and all of that. So basically we remove all of the questions. So that's where we're going to focus most of our time today, is on Forks Meal Planner. I joined the Forks Over Knives team initially as a content person, and I was supporting the recipe app content. And then within my first month on the job, this product was pitched, and it's been kind of I don't want to say my baby, but it's been very, very tied to my tenure at Forks Over Knives, and it's where I focus all of my attention now. So we will spend, the duration of this kind of discussing the meal planner. So we can start out with kind of what's a meal planner. So Forks Meal Planner is a comprehensive meal planning tool. We tell you what to eat for every meal, and we try to consider the reality of the experience of eating home-cooked meals throughout the entire week. So shopping, preparation, kind of the mise en place, all the way through to portioning out food for each family member according to their appetite. So we offer compliant, reliable, accessible plant-based recipes and a platform that steps the user through the experience of preparing them. So when I say compliant, that's defined by the dietary philosophy of Forks Over Knives, which is very specific. So no oil, no animal products, etc. Reliability refers to the fact that we don't know the skill level of the home cook who's using the product. So we want them to have a really positive experience when they make the food. We want it to not only be edible, but be enjoyable when they're done. And in terms of accessibility, we can assume with a certain amount of, flexibility, the basic tools and ingredients that the majority of our demographic would have. So our demographic being middle-aged women in the United States, we can assume the pots and pans and ingredients and general tools and skills that they might have. And the fundamental problem that we're trying to solve is that question of, someone comes home and what's for dinner? We want to completely remove the decision fatigue of people asking what's for dinner and then how to get from the grocery store onto the table in preferably 30 minutes or less. That is our goal. So we identified within this plant-minded group of people 3 different kind of user personas. And I pulled these images from our initial feasibility study and then actually compared them with some users that we have now. And it's funny how really spot on these people, these groups are. And then to get the product out of the gate, we had to make some assumptions because there are so many variables and so many various things that can happen. We had to basically just make some decisions. And we started out by identifying that there would be 3 different serving sizes, essentially. We would have one for individuals, one for couples, and one for families. And because it is meal planning, it's also meal prep in a certain way where we have people prepare leftovers every time. So for an individual, it would be 2 servings. For couples, they would be making 4 servings. And for families, they would be making 8 servings. We also assumed from a recipe perspective that some quantities of ingredients, for instance, maybe like hot spices or something like that, that the quantities would vary at a higher serving size. So the content team entered each ingredient series 3 times, a 2 serving version, a 4 serving version, and an 8 serving version. So as I explained earlier, a plant-based diet, one of the fundamental things is that you get to eat a ton of food, which is definitely a benefit. However, calorie density does mean that our serving sizes are relatively gigantic. And kind of what we learned early on is that we can't know what will satiate someone, because we don't say specifically you should eat this much. It's you should eat until you're satiated. You should eat until you are content. So that can vary a lot depending on whether you're an athlete, your age, your size, your metabolism. And so one of our initial assumptions, that an individual would eat one serving and that a child would eat one serving, it ended up not quite being the case. And these pictures are here because this is one of my favorite ones, the one on the left here. This person was preparing a meal for a family, and they were using their biggest pot in their kitchen, and they still have to add the spinach and the zucchini that you see off to the side. So they sent this in and they were like, are you familiar with how big pots are? And so we had to really think about, what are we telling people to do? We're telling people to cook an astronomical amount of food. So very early on, I would say probably within our first 10 months or so, we reverse engineered every recipe to scale from 0.5 of what we had considered a serving all the way up to 1,000. So what I learned kind of early on in product development, like I said, I come from the content angle. So what I learned early on is that the solution pretty much to everything is going to be some form of a spreadsheet, pretty gigantic usually. And in hindsight, I'm glad that we did this when we did, because it was a problem that was only going to get bigger and bigger. And it also reduced the amount of effort from the content side, because now they only had to enter the recipe one time, because that assumption about the spicy ingredients and things like that also turned out to not be the case. So at this point, people can choose any serving size from half a size, which might be considered a child size portion, all the way up to 1,000 plus servings, which could even be used in an industrial kitchen or a cafeteria type scenario. So it can work basically for any application at this point. Another problem that we ran into is from the brand perspective. I pulled this exactly from our kind of responses that we send out to people. We choose not to include nutritional information, as we would not encourage nutrient tallying and calorie counting, which we believe can create more problems than they solve. So if you go to the website, or if you go to the recipe app or any of our other sources for content, we do not provide nutrition information at all. However, when we did the feasibility study for the meal planner, it was very clear that people who were interested in this product were there for health reasons. They're often there to lose weight or to reverse disease. And therefore, we have to offer this nutritional information. It's a must-have. They absolutely wanted it. So when we started out, we did not include nutrition information because we didn't have the infrastructure to provide it. When we did eventually kind of get past the first couple hurdles, we did add it in. We added it in through an integration where it would basically estimate based on these the ingredients, and it would kind of guess the nutrition information and give users an idea of what the nutrition facts would be. Later on, we do now have actual nutrition information for every single recipe, though it is still hidden behind. It requires an additional click to get there. And that's how we kind of balanced, what the brand stands behind, and then also what users need and what is going to make the product most useful for those users. We do note, obviously, that it is still an estimation because we can't know everything about the size of your potato or, things like that. And what we are looking to in the future in regards to nutrition information is we've found that these users also tend to track their calories over a span of time. So they use a tool like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or some other app to basically track all of their nutrition information and what's going in and out. So we're now working on integrating that so that we don't necessarily have to build the tracker into our product, because it's not something, again, that we philosophically want to support. but we want to enable other people, to do that if they so wish. So integrating with nutrition tracking services, and then also integrating with grocery store and kind of delivery services like Amazon Fresh or Instacart, so that the app works with other apps that users are already using and makes their experience overall more seamless. To kind of switch it up a little bit and talk about something else, like I mentioned before, people were looking for recipes, so we gave them recipes. And initially, when we were getting things up and running, we would send out an email every week with the full menu, and that was automated. So on the back end, we just had the menu set up for the next week, and then it would kind of just send out every week to everybody, here's what the menu is going to be this week. People also were finding the meal planner because we had this audience coming from Forks. So typically they would sign up for Forks updates as well as meal planner updates. So they would already have free recipes in their inbox that would drive them to the website that had free content. There's also bloggers and other plant-based influencers and people that are also giving away recipes for free. And so we did have to think, what are these emails really offering people? Like we want them to come into the meal plan, but it kind of just seems like a box of recipes. They're not really getting the full view of what we're offering. So we decided to shift a bit and add more value to the emails. So beyond recipes, what can we offer? Where are we hearing that users need more help? And it came down to, we can't expect every user to do the cooking course, to read all of the books, and then to join the meal planner. And we have tons of assets from the other brand resources that we can pull into this approach. So we can add in kitchen tips and tricks. We can add in information on ingredients that we want to become accessible. So things like jackfruit, sorghum, things that people kind of look at on the grocery list and they're like, where do I find that in the grocery store? Feature spotlights. So that's for new features and for lesser known existing features that maybe we announced last year, but then got kind of hidden or aren't referred to as much. And then I think importantly, a celebration of our users. So user spotlights, they build community and also just motivation and confidence. So maybe you're trying to minimize side effects of arthritis, and you see a success story, a little blurb that says that somebody else is having success with that, and it keeps you going on the meal plan for another week. And eventually, we hope that impacts your health journey in a positive way. The obvious drawback to this approach is that the previous one was automated and didn't require really any effort from the content or marketing teams. And doing this higher touch approach, we do have to discuss this every week. There's no way to get around it. But in my mind, it's the difference between, yes, it's more effort, but it's the right type of effort that, one, keeps us really attuned to what the users are looking for. It gives us a way to address kind of user questions and things that come up in a more timely manner, because we do develop recipe content 6 months out. So we can't necessarily address recipe issues on the fly, but we can tell people about a confusing ingredient that's in that week's menu, or maybe how to seed a pomegranate or something like that in this email, which then is like, oh, okay, now I know how to seed a pomegranate. I'm not intimidated by that anymore. Let me go into the meal planner and make recipes for this week. And ultimately, if people are using the product, they're going to stick around. So that's the goal, is to just give more value, get them into the planner, get them using it, and then they'll stick around. So similarly, we've talked a lot about recipes. We've talked a lot about kind of the early stages of the product. And at the very beginning, as you can imagine, we have one chef for the whole brand. So she's working on the website. She's working on the books and the magazines. And then suddenly the meal planner needs 10 or more recipes every single week. We need 3 breakfasts, 3 lunches, 3 dinners, 3 snacks. So we just had to kind of figure out, like, okay, where are we going to get these from? Who's going to handle this? And these recipes have to have shared ingredients. They have to be done in 30 minutes. They have to be, everything has to be available at an average grocery store in the middle of kind of a rural environment. So for the first year, I will say our culinary project manager, a one-woman show, she was fantastic and she did it all, but it wasn't sustainable. So she got kind of pulled away to work on her book, which is great. It's the flavor book. So I got to taste all those recipes, and that's a great perk of the job. But year 2, we pulled in contributors from the website and other sources and kind of bloggers and things like that. We pulled them in, and that was another situation where it's just a lot of spreadsheets. We also had a recipe tester. So we would get contributions, have them go through testing, and then get added to the planner. So that was a very high touch kind of solution, but it wasn't a really great solution. And so we needed support that was like specific to the product, that wasn't going to come from necessarily like the brand's overall resources. And so for the last couple of years, we have partnered with a recipe development team that has an established infrastructure and that has an established infrastructure. So they have nutritionists on staff. They have a whole team of recipe developers. They have a tasting panel. So they deliver to us concepts that we can kind of vote on, yes, no. And our touch base with them became, instead of us touching every single recipe every single day, now we touch base with them once a month, and then they just deliver and they deliver the recipes and kind of take care of all of those things. They also supply us with the nutrition information, so we can just plug that in and we don't have to integrate something for that, and we're not guessing on that. So what's become important is, because our team is so lean, I should speak to this briefly. The meal planner specific team is only 3 individuals. So it's me. I came from a content background and now have moved more into product and marketing. We have a content dedicated person who does all of the recipes and communications. And then we have a customer support person who's 100% dedicated to user interactions, updating subscriptions, dealing with payments, things like that. So a lot of our time is spent communicating with experts and agencies and working with external partners to make sure that we're getting everything that we need. So that's in terms of design, marketing, recipes, paid media, all of that kind of stuff. We partner with experts on those things. And that's why we're here today, hanging out with Uruit, is that our core team, we tune into the users and the content and kind of where we're coming from and where we're going. And then also what the business needs are and kind of what our goals are. But we are not in any way designers or engineers or data analysts or any of those like really, expert people. So when we started working with Uruit, basically, we have one conversation to kind of get everything kicked off. And then Uruit is like, here's a whole suite of resources, right? Here's our, great UX designer. We have mobile app developers. We have, the web platform developers, UX, UI, all of those things. And they bring forth all of their varied experiences from other projects, from other products, the best practices that they've learned about in various, whatever professional development that they're doing, and just a depth of knowledge that we couldn't have any other way. If we had a staff of people on the project who were performing these roles, I'm sure that would be fantastic in some ways, but also, people come and go and things fluctuate. And by kind of partnering with Uruit, I don't have to worry about those things. They can worry about those things. And I can stay really tuned into our users, the, kind of social listening, kind of figuring out what the user's looking for and keeping my energy focused on that, which then, lets us really move into, making changes when it comes to more business and getting everything going in that way. I did go pretty swiftly through this, so we have quite a bit of time. I'd love to answer some questions and kind of speak to anything that anyone has any follow-up questions on. Welcome back, Cesar.
Hey, thank you very much, Leslie, for sharing your experience. I mean, we'll start with the Q&A, as you said. I've received a couple of questions already, and I see some more popping up right now. So let's start. What are some of the key metrics that you look at? That's the very first question we received.
Oh, key metrics. Yeah, I mean, preparing this for today was an interesting time to reflect on how I spend my time and what I really focus on in regards to the product. And a lot of that is looking at metrics. So we track everything from basically a page view. So we have the FOK brand views, impressions, et cetera. And then that translates into meal planner page views across landing and squeeze pages through to click-through rates. They click through to a registration funnel. So we track every step of the funnel to account creation, and then from account creation through to a paid membership. And so that's what we're looking at in terms of a kind of funnel. But beyond that, I think what's important from a forks over knives perspective, the product is a bit seasonal. So we see a big spike in January when everybody decides that they want, new year, new you, they're going to be on a new diet, they're going to achieve all of their goals. So we do have a lot of traffic that comes up in January. And then also it's a bit of an aspirational product. Sometimes I speak to it in terms of being almost like a gym membership where people sign up, but then getting them to come to the gym, getting them to go shopping and then, cook is maybe more of an aspirational thing. So we can see that in that people become very motivated, but then maybe they don't convert until later. Or maybe they convert much, much later. So I look at those metrics across every week and then across every month, and then also year over year to see basically like the zoomed in thing of like what's happening right now. Sometimes we have affiliate partners, or we have a big dedicated email, or we have a promotion, and that's going to have a big impact in the initial week. But then across the month, we see more of the kind of longer term trends. And then year over year, we see really, really interesting things in terms of the plant-based movement as a whole. So for instance, when there's a new plant-based documentary that comes out, or when there's a new big study that comes out that people are talking about, we'll see a jump in traffic from that. And then it's up to us to kind of turn that traffic into converted paying users. So I do spend quite a bit of time. I mean, I think some of our team knows that most of my Monday is basically sitting and just playing with charts and numbers and filling in spreadsheets and kind of trying to analyze things in the short term and then also in the long term.
Awesome. Before the next question, I want to just say we'll also start a brief poll for you to give us feedback about the webinar satisfaction for every attendee to be able to answer. And to the next question, Leslie, pretty quickly, it's also related to metrics. How do you decide on marketing metrics, brand metrics, etc., to measure success, and at what level constitutes success? For example, number of recipe downloads should be above 10. How do you decide on the 10 value?
Interesting question. So we look at things not so much in terms of individual recipes, but maybe how people come from an email and then how many times they engage with the planner through the week. So we have like a recipe view event and metric that we can look at. And ideally, people are using the planner 3+ times a week, because then it's become a staple in their lifestyle. They're using it ongoing. So we can look at how many people are using it with how much frequency and kind of predict how likely they are to be retained and to continue to use the product. I think from the FOK brand side, there might be more of a strict metric in terms of recipe views or printouts and things like that. But from the meal planner view, it's more about frequency of use. And especially if we can get people in the free trial to use any part of it within 14 days, that's going to be a pretty good indicator in terms of them seeing the value in the product.
Understood, makes sense. We have another question. Do you have ways to predict user churn? That's a tough one.
It is a tough one, but we do. So we have 3 different subscription types. People can sign up for a month. They can sign up for a quarter, so a quarter of a year, 3 months, or they can sign up for the annual plan. And we do offer a significant discount if you sign up for the annual plan. So most of our users are on that 1-year plan. So an interesting thing that happens, and part of the reason why I look at that year-over-year metric, is because if I want to predict kind of the worst case scenario in terms of churn, I can look at how many people signed up the previous year and with which subscription. So we can basically assume worst case scenario that every person who signed up for an annual membership last March is going to cycle out this March. That's worst case scenario. We don't see that happening, but we can predict with relative certainty, a percentage of people that will churn out after a year. And we can look at, monthly and quarterly as well. But the biggest chunk for sure is those annual users, because there's such a discount associated with that subscription type.
Awesome. All right, regarding users as well, are you more focused on free trial users or growing your subscriber base?
Good question. So I didn't speak to this in the presentation, so I'll mention it now. We do have a 14-day free trial. And when the product was initially introduced, it was an unlimited free trial. So it was, I think, maybe 30 recipes, and you could have access to those forever. We did add we constrained it to 14 days after maybe the first 6 months or so to add urgency in terms of converting, because people do have to actually try it to see the value in it. And, it wasn't going to change month 1 to month 6 in terms of what they had access to trying. So my focus is more about getting trial users to paid premium subscribers, but that's kind of a luxury and a privilege of the brand being very forthcoming and having a lot of resources to put into getting people into the free trial. I mean, we're definitely attuned to both things. I mean, they go hand in hand with each other. But because the brand as a whole has so many eyes on it, I mean, we have a million Instagram followers, and then we have a link in a bio every week. So we're getting those eyes to the page regardless. So we're focused on getting them into that trial. But then the harder question is kind of how to get the trial into a premium user, because there isn't a certain amount of overwhelm that comes with, hi, welcome. Now here are 20 recipes that we want you to make in the next 2 weeks. So that's my main focus, is getting that trial user to give it a go and convert to a premium user. Understood.
Right now we're receiving a lot of questions, but I'm gonna put up the next couple ones. Given the data, there could be, say, 20 different possible personas. How do you settle on agree on the personas?
You're right. There could be an infinite number of personas for sure. And I think it kind of boils down to the ROI on creating different personas. People, like I said, everybody eats. And so I really like boiling everything back down to that we could take that one human who has this need and segment them into an infinite number of different personalities and different approaches. But we did settle kind of on three, and then within that three, and we speak to different ones in our daily meetings because now we have users. So now that we have users, it's less about personas and more about listening to what's actually happening and who's actually using the product. We sit down and basically, like I said, there aren't that many people in the room when we do this, but we sit down and talk about what we see. What are people stressed about? What problem are they trying to solve? Who are they? And so we talk, and then we give them names. So we have, I remember we have Susan and we have Sean, and then when we talk about Sean, we know exactly who Sean is. And we named Sean after Sean, an actual user who was a power user for the first couple of years. And so, because we've been on the product for so long, I feel like we almost have this little menagerie or like team of personas that we can pull from when we're thinking about feature development. Who is this going to speak to the most? When we talk about email communications, whose problem are we going to solve with this little tip or trick? And we now that I'm thinking about it, we haven't done this for a while and probably should make it a more regular revisit, because it really is just kind of sitting down with a piece of paper and attributing different concerns, needs, worries, personality traits, even, the kind of more quantitative things like how much this person is willing to spend, what's their budget, what's their financial situation, which is something when COVID hit a whole year ago now, we had to sit and think like, how have our personas situations changed? So what, do we need to offer a discount? Do we need to extend the free trial longer? Do we need to offer more value totally for free? Do we need to integrate with a grocery delivery partner? What is going to change? We didn't have a good view of what was going to happen, obviously, but we did our best in terms of trying to serve those users that we know exist. And just considering the reality of their situation. I mean, one nice thing about this product is that it's not that abstract. It's literally cutting up potatoes, cooking potatoes, eating potatoes. So we don't have to use too much imagination. The people are there.
Absolutely. All right, the next one, I believe you pretty much covered it a few moments ago, but what made your company actually go with a software studio versus building software in-house? I know you talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, Forks is pretty small. When we had an office, there were about a dozen people in that office, and those positions are, communications, mostly about the website, editorial content, things like that. Just to be completely transparent, there's no one kind of on our side that has extensive technical background, even in terms of managing that team. So it would be a huge undertaking for us to independently source, hire, and then, maintain a team over time, especially considering, so last year rebranded the whole site, so there's some things that we really need full-time people for, an extended period of time. There are other times or products where we don't need a dedicated team, or we only need kind of maintenance support. And given all those different variables, and, I think it's really important in product to know what you don't know, and to know like when to ask for help. So we just don't really have the desire or bandwidth to have a whole team of our own. And it makes a lot more sense for us to call someone like you and say, hey, this is our situation. This is what's coming up for us. This is what we need. And have you guys come back to us and say, okay, from what we can tell, it seems like you need X, Y, and Z, and we can, roll with the punches. And then also hiring is really challenging. I think people underestimate the amount of energy, effort, and just kind of resources go into hiring. And it takes us also, because we're so mission driven, it takes us a long time to find the perfect fit. And so we let you guys do that. And it's actually worked out extremely well, I would say, in terms of culture fit and communication. When we started working with Uruit, it just kind of naturally went really well. And that's not, we realized that that's not always the case also. So we partner with people because we know what we need help with.
Thank you for the kind words. It was a very good question then. All right, so this one, we have plenty more, but in sake of time, let me ask two more. Do you have any tips and tricks to a successful product? Maybe.
Oh, this is a good one. There's always tips and tricks. I think something that, I just said, like, kind of know what you don't know. I think that the thing to do now is to kind of act as if you know everything, right? Because I can Google it, or I can figure it out, or I can look it up, and I can learn on the fly. And that's all great. And that curiosity is fantastic, obviously. But I think just to kind of stay realistic about what your area of expertise is and what you can really speak to, that's super important. And then something that just over time I've had to really fight for and kind of learn, and it's just having, from where I sit, right? So there's people, stakeholders, and business needs that come from kind of above. And then there's these, supporting and managing a team that reports directly to me, and then all of the agencies and people that we work with. And so it's been a process to really make sure that I have touch points with all of those people on a regular basis, and just being in the room, even if you're sitting on a call and don't say anything. You don't know what's happening in that call that you might need to know, or that you might be able to speak to, or that might ask some other question. And so, a lot of my time is kind of just being in the meetings, in the Zoom room, listening and kind of being available and trying to pick up as much as I can from the brand side, the agency side, and just making sure that I'm listening and coming with a sense of curiosity. To that same point, let's see, tips and tricks. It's kind of the same thing with the metrics, right? Like checking in on a lot of different things all the time, zooming in and zooming out to kind of make sure that nothing's happening too abstractly somewhere else that you're not aware of. Yeah, I don't know. Tips and tricks. Good question. Maybe I'll think of more.
We can follow up on that one afterwards. Hopefully, this is not the last webinar we have with you, Leslie. It's been a lovely experience so far. And I have a last question over here. I'm seeing that we're very close to the end and looking at the time right now. How is your team composed?
So our team, the meal planner specific team, like I said, is basically me, a content person, and who's been with us for many years now, and then a customer support person who has also been on like with the Forks team for a long time. And the three of us are the only people who are dedicated 100% to meal planner. However, we have, the whole structure from the brand. So we have, marketing coming from that side, editorial coming from that side, the culinary project manager, as I mentioned, like she's available to consult with us anytime and also gives us feedback on recipe concepts and things like that. We bring in individuals as well. So we have, a recipe editor who is not dedicated 100% of the time to the project, but again, partnering with experts. You would be so surprised the things that I've learned from this recipe editor about how a recipe is written. And, she's worked for Bon Appetit and Epicurious, and we can bring in like real, expert level, expertise from that side. And that's how we make our guide as far as how we write things and things like that. In terms of our team on the Uruit side, I believe that we have 2 mobile developers and a web developer and a UX person. And then we added a data analyst to kind of keep track of metrics. So it's funny when I think about it, because our core team at the meal planner is really much smaller than the big picture. There's a lot of people who are weighing in on things. and then we really execute on those. We also have a social support person who moderates our community group, which is on Facebook. And when people come there for motivation and support, we have basically a plant-based coach who runs her own plant-based cooking center and education center. And she's there to support our users and answer any questions that they have. And she's a great resource as well.
Awesome. So that's the last question. We have more. Probably we can answer those offline. Just so everybody knows, you'll receive the webinar's recording by email in a few moments, right after we end this call today. Thank you very much for joining us, especially Leslie for sharing this space with us. Hope you all enjoyed it. Take care, be safe, and see you the next time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.